Hey guys, how's it going? It's Chris in another episode of Creatively Speaking. First and foremost, thank you so much, folks, that you guys are listening to these episodes. It really brings a smile to my face. I look at them analytically and love that you are enjoying these episodes. For those of you that have become supporters or subscribers to the show, thank you so much. That means the world to me. What we're trying to achieve is by bringing this podcast one level up, and with your support, it is going to continue to do such. So thank you so much on that. And if you have not become a supporter or subscriber and you would like to, please feel free, hit that link onto this episode or go on to anchor.fm/cashhunt, CASHUNT, and it will give you the information to do such. So this episode is called Unrealistic Occupations. Now, that might sound a little bit foreign to you, but if you're in the creative industry or are thinking about getting into the creative industry, this might fall under that category of unrealistic occupations. Now, it's a terminology, or it was or a comment that my wife made about 4 or 5 years ago to me, and I personally loved it, and I use it all the time. A lot of people might find it as an insultive type of way of saying something, but it's really a compliment, and that's how she delivered it. And unrealistic occupations are something that we are surrounded by every day, more so than ever. The creative industry has become very strong, and it has definitely not reached its peak at all. Is the creative industry new? Absolutely not. The creative industry has been around for years, decades, a couple centuries, if anything. More so in the last 100 years. It's definitely evolved. And who are those in the creative industry? Your writers, your artists, your game designers, your app designers, public artists. The list goes, musicians, the list goes on and on. And there are a slew of other types of quote-unquote unrealistic occupations that are becoming part of the norm. Now think about this, for example. I want you to look at your phone. I want you to look at your tablet. That device, I don't care if it's an Android device or an iPhone. Each one of those apps, forget about the actual device, is its own separate business. I don't care if it's a game. I don't care if it's a social app or an informative app, etc. It is all started by a creative thought process, which to many, before those individuals created that thought process and mentioned it to a family member or a friend, unless they're in the same creative industry, it's going to look a little bit unrealistic. However, though, these types of individuals, and I've mentioned this in the past podcasts as well, there's nothing wrong with their way of thinking. The scenario of it is it's not a traditional job, such as your accountant, plumber, sales manager, attorney, someone in the medical field. Those are more staples. Those are a little bit more accepted. By saying I'm going to be a game designer, an app designer, or a comic book writer, or I'm going to create an escape room, or I'm going to write children's books, whatever the case might be, those aren't really looked upon as like, really? You're really going to do that? They'll say to you. Next question. I don't think there's any money in that. Really? There are too many examples I can give you. And if you're in the creative industry, you already know about those examples. That there are people that are sticking out in the creative industry by doing something different, taking that risk. And they're making 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, 6 times more money than those traditional jobs. Isn't that amazing? Because they stick out. And the funny thing about that is, those individuals that question it, that's fine. They're inside the box. They don't see anything outside of it. They're not willing to take that risk. They're not willing to understand on what you're trying to achieve or create. But if you do succeed, guess what happens? However long it takes, It might take you 5 months, it might take you a year, it might take you 3 years, it might take you even 10 years. They're going to come around. Oh yeah. And guess what they're going to say to you? I told you could do it. I know her idea was fantastic. Well, let's rewind the tape a little bit. To the very first time I mentioned that idea. When you mentioned that idea, you indicated, wouldn't work. Isn't it funny how things all come back to the norm? That's how people are. So when you open up your phone and you hit those apps, those are accepted. Think about Facebook. Facebook, which is a juggernaut, which was started in a little dorm room. Or TripAdvisor, that was in a little office above a pizza store here in my home state of Massachusetts. How are those types of businesses, and that's just literally the 1%, how are those businesses received when those ideas came about? I can't tell you that they were probably received that well, unless they were unless they were talking to people that were in that creative business or in the creative industry. And now look at what they are. It's not also about the money. A lot of people see money before anything else. If you enjoy what you like, or you have a passion about something, or you think there might be something in this world that creatively does not exist and you want to put your 2 cents and do it, then do it. Maybe start it off as a hobby. Don't lose your day job on it unless you want to. Start it as a hobby, and then guess what? It might turn into a business. That's what happened with my business. Think about it. I was starting a scavenger hunt business. How well do you think that was accepted? How many head tilts did I get? And then almost 19 years later, I knew you'd do it. The funny thing about that is that's all fine and dandy. But always remember, in a creative type of business or any type of business, there's a long journey, and it's going to take a lot. By taking that journey, and if it makes you happy in the end, and if you're getting paid maybe about 20% less than your traditional job at the beginning, then do it. It makes you happy. And keep one thing in mind. That unrealistic job, if successful, and if done right, and if it marketed right, and researched right, you'll be making probably 2 times, 3 times, 5 times, maybe even 10 times more than what you might have made on that traditional job. The reason for that? Because it's unrealistic. It might be a one of a kind, a two of a kind. There's not that many on the market. Because the traditional jobs are oversaturated. I want you to think about one thing. Think about how many kids graduate from college every year, and how many institutions there are, not only in the country, but in the world. Now I want you to take those traditional jobs and see how many jobs exist for all those kids. I'll tell you, not that many. The factor of it is this. I have a friend that happens to be an attorney, and he said to me one time, he goes, make sure your kids don't become attorneys. And I said, why? That's insane. It's a great paying job. The truth of the matter is, he goes, there's so many attorneys graduating every year, via their bar exams or whatever. The truth of the matter is that unless you stick out with a specialized form of law, or you're practicing something different that's not in the norm, then you just become part of the cattle. And that's the way of life on a lot of occupations. There's nothing wrong with them, but you got to work hard to stick out. When you're in an unrealistic type of environment, or creatively speaking, in a unrealistic environment, well, you stick out a lot more, and there's not that much of you in this a scenario where you stick out a lot more. And in today's world, you can be found a lot easier, a lot quicker via the internet and what have you. So I don't care, guys, if you want to create a channel on YouTube or create a book or whatever the case might be, or an app, you just go for it. Don't listen to anybody's way of kind of bringing your idea down, especially because it doesn't sound realistic to them. The factor of it is, if you do, I will guarantee you this is what's going to end up happening, and this is the 99%. You're going to drop it. You're going to actually believe your critics. And guess what might just happen? 2 years down the line, 3 years down the line, 10 years down the line, you're going to turn on the TV and you're going to see that someone created the same idea. The world is large, guys. And it's a race. Doesn't mean that someone else on the other side of the planet might have the somewhat the same idea as you. It's just a matter of who's going to get to it first. So if you have a creative idea that you think has potential, then you go do it. And then you sacrifice a little bit of your time. You might have to sacrifice watching shows or going out with your friends just to kind of really push the envelope. You market it well. You research it well. If there's a competitor out there, you see what they're doing. And by doing that, you will be successful. So don't listen to people. If you ever hear the terminology unrealistic occupation, consider it a compliment. Don't ever get discouraged by that. And this is coming from one creative businessman to the creative business community out there, all you young men and young women. And for those that are thinking to dipping their feet in the creative community, go for it, guys. We are stronger than ever, and we have so much to show the public of our talents. And don't ever shortchange yourself on your ideas. Show them what you got. Trust me, I am sure the people, the public, are going to love what you have in store for them. Guys, thank you so much for listening to this episode of Creatively Speaking. Hopefully it entertained you, it informed you, and like I always say, have a notebook handy right there, guys, because I want you to research. I want you to take some notes down if you see it, that certain things of this episode helped you out, and create your own destiny. Again, if you'd like to subscribe to our podcast, feel free. Hit that link onto this episode. Thank you so much for listening, guys. I'll talk to you soon.